Welcome back to Next in Leadership, the podcast. And I wanted to describe what is Next in Leadership. And you're probably listening. If this is your first time, you're saying, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I have no idea. You know, it's nice and warm and cozy in my parents' basement, but that may not be my long-term plan. Or maybe you're not happy at the job you're at. Or maybe you feel like you're underutilized. Or maybe you even feel like you're underpaid. Or maybe you just want something more. Next in Leadership is your path to help you achieve that. The mission is ultimately to help you live the life you always wanted for yourself and get out of the hole that you're currently in. And I knew you can't do that on your own, just like I didn't do that on my own. Go ask any of your parents, go ask any of your friends, go ask any of those people you're coming alongside. They didn't do that on their own. They had someone come alongside them. And you know what? You can pick someone, and that wouldn't be the right person to trust always. We want to be a group that you can trust, that are going to lead you down there. I don't have any aspirations other than your own aspirations. I'm doing this as a way to invest the experience that I've had, the people that I bring along, and they're willingly investing their experience to help you live the life that you always dreamed of. And that's what Next in Leadership is. And so how do you do that? You first find us on socials at nextinleadership.com. at Next in Leadership, but also nextinleadership.com. Both places you can find us. And, you know, there's a verbal search, etc. So what do you do when you get there? Take a quiz. That's it. See where you're at right now. We got to know where you start, right? Go to the doctor. They give you a test. They take your vitals. That's what we're doing with that quiz. We're going to see right where your starting point is so that you can see your progress. That's something you can give yourself a pat on the back as you see your progress growing towards the outcome you're looking for. What's new? We're back in the studio. Don't you love it? Even have a new shirt this week. And we're going to have another guest interview next week, and we do every week. And so this audio podcast will be posted on Tuesday mornings on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, the video podcast, so you can see my bright, shiny face and put this face for radio on camera. On the video podcast, we'll go live at 10 a.m. on Tuesdays. And so always we have Reed's Rant. That's what you guys look forward to. That's why you join each and every week. You want to hear me ranting. Reed's Rant. That's what my kids always say. Dad, please rant, especially when we're encapsulated in the car, driving to a family destination. We cannot wait, especially the longer car rides, so you can hear you rant longer. So I'll try to keep it abbreviated for you, but we have two choices, learning from others versus learning from doing. And so it's this or that. Which one? And, you know, I think this is a tough choice sometimes. But, you know, I would say that I will have to choose the best place for me personally is learning from others. Because I realize that learning from doing is a long path, right? If I had to go do something, run a business, build a business, go and build a big business, then I learn from doing, then I'm going to be that much further on the path. But if I can study all the others that have built a business, I can broaden my audience. And then I do a deep dive of study. What do they do right? What do they do wrong? And so my personal preference of choice is reading books. I read last year, particularly, I read 250 books. And it's learning from others. They put their best information in there. I learn from others. Then I sit and I watch how people conduct themselves, right? And in fact, most recently, I was flying on a plane next to an individual, and he happened to be a leader of another organization that I was sitting next to. And as I was communicating with him, I was learning how he, further along, had made decisions. And I'm thinking, okay, would I make the decision that way or not? I put myself in that position and say, how would I, given the information he gave me, make that decision going forward? And so that's a way that I'm learning from others. And I think if we are ones that have to learn from doing, we're going to learn from our mistakes, and we are going to learn from doing, right? But if I'm learning from others, then my success ratio when I actually do it will be higher than if I'm just learning from doing without learning from others. In fact, I'll take it a step further. When I'm approaching a big decision that I haven't done in the past, I have a grid. Think of it like a tic-tac-toe board. And in the upper left-hand corner, I said, they have experience doing it, or they don't have experience in doing it. That's the top line, right? And so it'll be a grid. And then the second piece would be they have an impact. It's impacting their lives, or it's not impacting their lives. Because if we have experience and it's impacting their lives, and then the third is they will help me implement or they won't help me implement. So an example of that far upper left-hand corner could be my wife, right? Is she has experience raising our children with me. She has impact of raising the children with me, and she has a decision or help implement the decision we're going to make with the children. Conversely, I might be sitting on the plane with someone that may have never had children, right, on the exact opposite extreme, that won't have any impact no matter how I choose to raise our children. and then ultimately won't be implementing that. And so obviously, if I fill out that grid with different people and ask those questions, I can learn from others and find the right decision. Now, if I just lived in the upper left-hand corner and I decided to raise my children a particular way, and I'm learning and then I see a mistake, that can be an accelerating cycle the wrong direction. So that's why I choose learn from others.
If you were in college, take you back to your college years and years ago.
Just minutes, actually.
If you were in college, would you still recommend learning from others, like learning from a teacher or a professor over actually like putting your own work into it?
Yeah, I think what I would say in that case is the others, you must select the right others. Many times we make a mistake by selecting the others in our proximity, right? It's kind of like asking for directions. I was actually just recently in Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. And when I was there, I couldn't find a particular place. And I was looking around at people I could ask. This was at an outdoor mall. And I was asking, and I went straight to the security officer instead of a shopper. And I looked to who asked why, because that security officer is patrolling that area all the time. And if there's anyone that knows that area better than the security officer, I would be surprised. That is their full-time job. However, if I went and asked someone that was shopping there, they may be from out of town, just like I was. I don't live in Phoenix. Or they may be shopping and may only know a couple of stores, not the particular thing I was looking for. So I think a lot of times we learn from the others in front of us because they're more convenient. I actually had to go find out the security officer instead of the person that was closest to me, which happened to be a teenager that was grabbing ice cream because I was just leaving the ice cream shop. But that's beside another point. And they may not have been the right person. So I think many times when we're learning from others, we don't pick the right others. And if we pick the right others, we'll learn a lot more. And however, the other thing is, if we learn that information, and I'm a big believer, this information without application is worthless. So once we decide what to do, eliminating other options, then we must go and do that. And then we will learn inherently from doing that. That either we listen to the right person, they give us good direction or otherwise. And so if you're in college, what do? Make sure you're listening to the right people. You're already making that passing judgment, right? As you go, start as a freshman, or maybe you're sitting in a classroom like, I'm not going to learn anything from this teacher. Or this is a great teacher, I should learn everything from this teacher. You're already making that determination. The only difference is choose who you want to learn with. It's not just because you signed up with that class. And it's not just because you're in the dorm room with that person. And it's not just because they're in your class with you or in your group. So the key to that is choose the people to learn from and then learn from others. And then once you've definitively gotten directionally the right direction, then you can learn and refine that knowledge through doing. So now we have the distinct advantage of learning from another, and this is Zach Cunningham. I had an opportunity to meet Zach. I was traveling to Dallas a couple of months ago, and I was down there, and I asked him to meet me, and we met, and it really kicked it off. And one thing I love about Zach, and you're going to see this, is his enthusiasm. He was exciting, and the other thing I learned about him in this interview, he's a twin. And his twin chose a different direction, and I find that super interesting because if we're really about next in leadership, and you think here's someone with the exact same DNA as you, someone that you competed with was born, I think he was born minutes ahead of his brother, then ultimately you can learn from them, but even their purpose and path is different because they don't have the same vocation. And so it's a great way to kind of look around that. His experience was shaped by his twin brother. He also learned discipline, humility, and growth. I think the other thing we can take from him is he determined early on what his direction was, and there was just a catalytic change in his direction, right? It was a big pivot. And then that gave him perspective. He understood who he was, and that led to his journey of next in leadership. And he also reminds us that, great leadership is not just about the title position, but it's around vision, character, and impact. And so Zach is a director of Salt Company in North Texas, which was his alma mater, and he was up in the Northeast at the time and then came down. And so I'm excited to have you hear our conversation, and hopefully you can take someone from this other, which happens to be Zach Cunningham. And so here we go. Welcome back to the Next in Leadership interview. Today we have Zach, and it's great to hear a story that is maybe someone a little bit younger than we had in the organization. So that you can kind of hear his story going forward, that everyone has a leadership journey. And we were briefly talking off camera about his leadership journey is different at the same. And I'm curious to see what we can take from Zach's journey that is similar to other of your journeys, but also learn what has been different and how he's applied that, as all our learnings are different. So, Zach, thank you for being on. And as I always start these conversations, really, what is your early leadership journey as you began to identify that maybe I have some leadership traits that others might see in me?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, dude. It's a pleasure to chat about leadership. My story's so unique growing up. I'm one of 6 kids with a single mom, And so that kind of shapes a little bit of my background. And not only that, but I have a twin brother.
Mm,
And so as I thought about leadership, like when did I start leading? I couldn't help but think about the competitiveness that I had with my twin brother
mm.
growing up, because each of us wanted to be the leader in the home. We're the oldest boys. I'm 1 minute older. And I think as I thought about my leadership and just the things people saw, I grew up really competitive, and that has shaped my whole life. I think I hate losing, specifically to my brother, and I think a lot of people look for a comparison in school, like find an arch nemesis in elementary school. I found mine in the womb really early. And I'm telling you, bro, like if you ask my brother, he'll listen to this. He'll say, we became leaders because we want to be better than each other.
Mm.
And that's shaped, I don't know, my entire life up to this point. So does that make sense?
Absolutely. I
Um,
think Yeah, one, I think that's super crazy because, we don't realize the external factors that internally impact our leadership journeys. And,
yeah.
and here is a great example, and I haven't had a twin on here, so you're the first one that's really told, or maybe they haven't told me they're a twin and they have an arch nemesis they don't talk about. But ultimately, I think the key to that is you have somebody with the same exact, are you identical twins, I assume?
We're fraternal, Reed,
You're
but if he
fraternal.
was here, bro, if he was here, you'd go, you guys look exactly alike.
Okay, so regardless, you have very similar DNA. And
Oh
so
yeah.
you have 1 minute advantage. I don't know how much of an advantage that's been in your entire life, but I
Mhm.
mean, you certainly stated it. But I mean, you're starting at the same point, and so there's nothing more. It's the same starting point. And I think we look at other people in different stages of their lives, and we think, okay, they're started different. They have different but everybody had a 1 minute advantage on somebody else, right? In that same
Yeah.
hospital, there's probably someone else that born at 1 minute. However, inside of you, that's what drove the key to be a leader. And I think the key takeaway for that is they need someone to spur you on, and that happened to be your
Oh
brother in the
yeah.
room. And I think the other thing is, even as you talked about that stood out to me is it was not in a destructive way, it was a productive way. You know,
Oh, totally.
and you're driving each other forward in a productive way. I picked that up. We can have competition in a destructive way or a productive way. You weren't trying to make him weaker. I think a lot of leaders try to do that. You were trying to be stronger than him. And that's a
Yeah, I don't know.
key
Maybe
distinction.
when we were young, maybe when we were younger though, I was trying to make them weaker. I don't know, but like competition, it warps, and it sometimes you try to use it in a negative way, but certainly the Lord used that in the positive sense to grow us academically, athletically, XYZ, bro. Like so, yeah, it definitely helped.
So as it helped you spur going forward, then there were some principles you probably learned along the way of leading self well, right? So you're
Oh
now
yeah.
detaching your twin. And what are some early things that you learned that, hey, you know what? I see patterns that, I can instill in my life or habits that are key to establish that lead to long-term self-leadership that I need to get early invested in your life. So what's an example of something like that, Zach, that you saw in your life?
I was thinking about that a little bit. Growing up, I don't know how much I thought about consciously I'm leading myself. It wasn't until I got to college
Hmm.
and I was really pursued by some older people, just a year or two older, and maybe 10 years older, where they were teaching you, hey, you have to lead yourself before you lead other people.
Mm.
And if you were to ask me what my habits were, like in college or high school, I don't even know if I would have consciously thought about them, but they were there. And so I think I had an experience freshman year in college where a guy really finally put a mirror in front of my face and said, hey, you actually know these are the habits and that's what's producing this version of you, which at the time there's some unhealth. So yeah, I don't know. I think it was a wake up call later in life that, hey, you better start leading yourself if you're going to lead other people.
Yeah, and I think so many times people fall into a default life, and that's kind of what happens in high school,
Oh,
right? And at
yes.
some point, you make that transition. It's like default is what are my friends doing? Default is what is someone else requiring of me, and do I choose to do that or not? A teacher has a program they want you to do, and you can decide whether you want to study in class or skip the test or skip class. And then in athletics, there's a little bit less of a default because you're choosing to be involved in athletics. But at the same time, as you're doing what the coach is practicing, and very few
That's
people
right.
go above and beyond. And so you're defaulting to what he has before you, and those become your habits, whether by on the other side. And so, a key part of that leading self, and I think it's critical for everybody that might be at that same point of the journey is, are you defaulting like, like Zach was for the first part of his life,
Oh,
and
yeah.
or are you deciding? Is there a day you're deciding that, you know what, I'm not going to live this default life? So you decided that early in your freshman year. What are some of the first things you adopted to lead self better as you decided, you know what, I need to start leading myself better? What are some of the early things you started doing?
Yeah, there's that shift though where you're right. Freshman year of college, you don't have to go to class.
Mm,
You don't have to work out anymore because the coach didn't give you the plan to be on the team. And so you really are confronted with, are you going to continue in this thing that was set up for you? Or are you going to be lazy and apathetic and drift? And so I just remember, man, my freshman year in college, as a spiritual person who loves the Lord, I thought, okay, am I going to continue going to church, lean into God's word, or am I going to just leave that behind? And so that was one of the first things I was convicted of my freshman year, is just being a man that's going to be disciplined. I think that's the bottom line. I'm going to wake up. I am going to get in the word. I am going to confess sin and grow. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to work out. Like the things without mom and dad or a boss or a coach or someone over you, you're going to have to, I think every man and woman, especially around that time of life, is going to have to make some of those decisions. And so I think some of that, I think spiritual growth, physical growth, relational growth. Also, you got to make friends. The thing that I look back my freshman year in college, I did not choose to be proactive in making friends.
mm.
I dated a girl from high school and went home every weekend. And man, that really hurt my growth in that area of life. And so eventually I had to like put myself out there, make friends, build those
Yeah, so you
habits.
went from default to deciding, and that's
Yes.
such a thing. And then what was the difference just in the daily activities, right? So now you were going to church. You, I assume, went to church periodically beforehand. You
Yeah.
worked out periodically beforehand. But the difference of defaulting to what the coach said in a workout to deciding to work out, to defaulting to what the teacher had, you got to go to class, to deciding. I mean, it sounds like to me you're working for a greater purpose, right? It wasn't about the day,
Yes.
it was about the long term. And so
Hmm.
many people default for the day, but they don't decide for the long term. And so once you made the decision for the long term, I'm going to be a disciplined person. I don't necessarily know what that leads to in the end, but I know it's way better than being a default person. And so,
Yes.
how did your focus on these next activities of working out and finding a girlfriend that I think you're married now, right? That eventually became a
Come
spouse.
on.
Yeah. And ultimately go forward. Are you married or no? I guess I'm
Oh, married 8 years and 3 kids to show for it,
That's what
Reed.
I
Come
thought.
on.
Yeah, exactly. You said, "Oh, come on." I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute." But, yeah, so 8 years and 3
It's
kids
great.
later. So clearly you decided to date and were disciplined around that attracted your spouse as well. So what was the difference of your perspective when you decided versus when you defaulted
Totally.
doing the exact same activities?
It's at that moment you got to think about two things. What are my values in life, my convictions, and then what's going to be the plan to move me towards those things? Because you can
Mm,
decide that I'm going to be a person that's going to be disciplined. Yeah, but what are you going to do? Just run? You can run 3 miles a day. Are you going to train for a marathon? Are you going to do those
right.
things? That's something I did in college. And you can date and hook up all those things, but what's the end goal? You got to think about what are my values in life? What am I building towards? But again, had I not had men call that out early on, freshman, sophomore year of college, I think I'd been aimlessly just doing stuff. But man, being given values in life, fleshing those out a little bit in your own heart, but then getting a plan to move forward. Whether it's working out, I trained for a marathon in college, so it was good for me to find a plan like that. Dating, I was giving some key convictions about dating and marriage, and some tips and tricks on how to get that going from people who've been there before. And so finding people ahead of you that's gone ahead, very helpful. So
Yeah, so again, extracting information out that have a purpose, and then it makes the daily habits and disciplines a lot easier, right? The marathon
totally.
example, where you wanted to be, and then lean into those who've been there before, right? And that's really the
Yeah.
purpose of this podcast in many ways is to give others an exposure to those who are maybe a little bit ahead or way further ahead in the direction they want to go. And that's what's next in leadership in this whole group. It's a wide variety of people going forward. And so started leading self well, and obviously leaders along that way saw some early disciplines in you, and that led to opportunities for you to lead others. So as you
Yeah.
stepped in from now, you're not just responsible for yourself, your daily routines and your habits. Now you're responsible for leading others. What are some early learnings about leading others, and what are some key takeaways or things that maybe you stumbled upon or picked up as you went along?
Yeah, I was trying to think like what was my first opportunity leading other people kind of from that moment on. Like I think I got involved at a college ministry, leading a small group. And there's some things you learn about yourself leading other people um, that doesn't happen unless you jump into that stuff. I think learning that people are messy really early on and entering in, and also that you have mess in your own heart. Leading others is where you start to invite some of that into your life where the spotlight's now on you. They start poking you a little bit. And so I think I learned that, like, if you're going to step into leading other people, you're going to have people looking at your strengths, but also your weaknesses and poke and prod. So I was grateful for that season. There's a lot of insecurity that came up and ironed out leading other people, but also some giftings too, which has led me to where I'm at today. It's just the ability to see people, connect with people, and help them take steps from where they are and where they want to be. I think that's what I learned jumping into like small group leading in our college thing early on.
I think early leadership, and I can experience it, I say to lead is to learn because you're
Yeah.
now, it's not what am I need to know from my knowledge base? What questions could I have to be equipped to answer for someone else? So I don't,
Yeah.
not everybody, I'm sure, as you were leading, thinks the same way I think, or vice versa, or has the same questions. And so it challenged me to be more comprehensive. And I think a lot of times, as early leaders, don't step into leading others because they don't want the accountability of leading others. Right. I
Yeah.
have to be prepared every time I'm meeting and leading another. Right. I mean, I lead small groups still, I have for 30 years. I can't walk in ill prepared. And that requires a greater level of discipline. But even on Fridays, I host a Next in Leadership Live. I have to, that's one, accountability to the audience that's there, right? We have about 100 people that are live every week. And
Wow.
then two, it's then I have to be prepared to, they're going to look for evidence of that in my life too. And so the leadership of others, to your point, is it's a matter of baked in accountability because you took the responsibility. And I think those people are leading self, and maybe they're afraid to step into that leadership role. What would you say to them? Say, hey, you're leading self. Now maybe you're going to lead this first small group just like you did. And you're afraid and you're excited because somebody tapped you on the shoulder and said you're going to be good at it. But then once you get in there, you recognize, you know what? There's different vantage points, and now I'm accountable to them. I mean, what's something you
Yeah.
can give them as a tool to take and say, hey, that accountability, lean into it because it'll make you a better person. Don't run from it because it's work, right? I think that's the two-edged
Oh,
sword right there.
well, you're gonna need some courage to step into that. But what I try to tell our guys leading in our context down here is you're not going to know everything. And that's actually great. And it's designed to help you grow in knowledge and wisdom. And so when
Mm,
you're sitting there, somebody asks you a question in life or theologically or whatever at the Bible, and you don't know it, don't try to like BS your way or come up with an answer, man. Like, no, no, no. Realize that God is going to use that context and that gap of knowledge for you to go back and study and learn and come back and help others. You'll demonstrate humility,
mhm.
demonstrate the ability to learn to other people, and that's actually going to do a lot more than just trying to come up. So that's going to help you a lot, I think, leading other people.
Yeah, and humility is a key trait to successful of leading others, right? I mean, I think if you try to lead others through pride, it won't last.
Yeah.
But if you lead others with humility, and what I found too is, hey, let's figure that out together,
Oh,
right? Let's
good.
multi research, right? Let's figure that out together because then it creates humility and fosters teamwork, right? Because now we're saying, hey, I don't know the answer to the question you gave me. But let's find that answer together. One, I'm learning, you're learning, and let's go to someone that may know, right? You can call somebody in your network that may know the answer,
Yeah.
or find a resource that you trust that would be able to do that. And then you learn together. And then if you go back to the group, it might have been a different thing. You share together. And
Yeah.
again, that is such a key tool to learn is, hey, we are all in this journey together. We have different perspectives, different strengths, and we build on top of each of those, and we align with those who are coming along that process. So, I think humility of leading others was super, super critical. What are some of the other things that you've seen as you've led others that maybe gave opportunity for others to step up? I know as you were leading in college and have subsequently led, and you lead others, what's something you've taken away from their growth and development underneath your leading of leading others? Is there any examples that you can think of that maybe you've had an impact because you stepped into leading others that other lives were changed?
Well, in my life and our network and the guys that I'm around, we care so much about developing leaders and giving them opportunity, come alongside me and growing. And so I think about a few of the guys that were either in that small group or on our church staff early on in college ministry staff who both pushed me to be a great leader, but also came along for the ride. And we grew together, kind of like what you were just describing. And so there are, 3 or 4 men who are in our network serving as college directors who either served with me, was on staff with me. And it's such a joy to watch them now lead and grow. In fact, I've talked to 3 of them in the past 24 hours,
Mm.
just like different situations. They're like, hey, Zach, remember when we did this together? What should I do in this situation that's similar to that? Or, hey, Zach, remind me your church plant journey, like, because I'm considering it. Like, it's just such a joy. Like, leading others is one of the greatest things, the joy of seeing other people step into great things and being along for the ride.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it builds, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
it's interesting because you have that twin, and then, I assume your twin isn't serving with you on the staff, but then you found another person that fit the role,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
not they're not your twin, but they spurred you on to greater growth, right? And so it's still that finding that running mate, that someone that's leading others, but also being a peer, which, clearly they've stepped into that role.
Yeah.
And then now it's leading the organization. How have you taken some of those things you've learned as you've led self, right? You developed humility as you're leading others and accountability. Now it's leading an organization. And really the difference is establishing systems. You can't talk to or touch everybody in the room every single day as you lead an organization. Now you have to really hope that they're aligned and going forward. So what's some key learnings you had as you stepped into leading an organization? I believe you're, lead pastor at a church, and
Yeah.
really seeing that you can't talk to all parties at every moment and you have a key role there. But what's some key things you've learned as you've started leading an organization?
Well, you wish you could. Part of you wants to keep it small and get to know
Mm,
everyone, but if your organization is going to grow, it's just not possible at all. I led a college ministry at Michigan State with a great team that started with 12, and by the time we left, there was 1,000 people. And if
mhm.
you try to lead those two groups in the same way, you're totally going to miss the mark. And so there was some grieving of the things you enjoy of a smaller group, 100 people, 200 people, knowing everyone, having them know you, knowing intimate things about their details, helping them follow Jesus in that life. But with that many people, 1,000 people, it really is a delegation process. It's recruiting leaders to have clarity, alignment, the same DNA that you want to propagate. And that's interesting, developing staff, hiring staff, and putting them in spots that can keep the thing moving forward. That's a gap, even in church planting, stepping up now into the lead pastor role. There's just more 30,000-foot decisions I'm having to make than on the ground. And I miss some of that. And at the same time, I'm getting to see it through the people on our team and equipping them. And so that's there is a gap that I'm experiencing. I don't know if I've got it all figured out, but here I am.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that make that step, and that's the whole point of this conversation, right? Is we can hear at different parts of the journey because everyone listening is at a different stage in their journey. But when you step from others to organization, the question is, do you value control and
Yeah.
comfort, or do you value growth? And if you value control and comfort, you're going to stay leading others, and that's okay. That we need as leaders of organizations, we need people willing to lead others. But if
Yes.
you value growth, that is going to be uncomfortable, and you don't have control. You have
Hmm.
direction, right? And so, it's often use an analogy of traveling on a vacation, right? You to pick the destination, and then if you try to control every detail, you'll actually never get there, right? Because you can't fly the plane, you can't, make the shirts that you're going to wear, the clothes you're going to wear, and all those other things. So you have to trust someone else has done their job, right? I mean, someone created a suitcase that'll hold together to put all your stuff in there. Someone, was the mechanic on the plane, and then you realize, wait a minute, the destination is what I really wanted in the end, right? I wanted to make this, and however, if you just want to walk there, you could probably control every outcome, right? And you can
Yeah.
keep it very small and slow. And I think that's the step: is decide what you want more. If you're stepping between others and organization, is do you want control and comfort, or do you want the destination? And then
It's
once you
great.
decide the destination, I think that's something that it's clear you decided to take a step away from this comfortable college ministry at Michigan State to step in. Did you ever live in Texas before you went down to the University of North Texas?
Oh, this is home. I actually went to the University of North Texas.
Ah, then you
So
went up
I,
to Michigan State. Okay, good.
that's
Well, I
right.
like you a lot better because I mean, Michigan State, we have as a Cornhusker, we have our,
Oh,
rivalry at times with
no.
them. They're in the
Hey,
Big
right now
Ten.
it's
So
hey Big Ten. That's what I'm saying. Like right now, bro, it's Big Ten versus the world. So we're holding on. We love the Cornhuskers.
that's right. Awesome. Yeah. So I think, as you stepped in and you went back home, right, and you were
Mhm.
equipped in the process, and this is a great kind of story arc because, you went to University of North Texas, and then you
Yeah,
went away to develop your skills, and then you came back. And sometimes that's part of our
that's right.
leadership journey too. We have to leave home. So maybe we'll talk
That's
about
right.
that a little bit as you left home. What did you learn as you left home, your comfort zone, your university you went to, and your twin, and you went to another place in an area you were unfamiliar with in enemy territory, because that's what we'll call those Spartans up there, but in enemy
That's right.
territory. And now here you are back home. What was the difference when you were gone that has helped you, enabled you to come back to home and lead in a
Oh my
different way?
gosh. Oh, there's perspective, life experience. I mean, there's so much that can happen. I left when I was 24 or
Mm,
23. Now I'm 31. So we're talking about 8 years, man, of leaving, looking back with perspective on the things that weren't great from home, but also the things that were good. I think it's easy to look back and go, there's nothing redeemable, but just getting away, getting perspective, growing in life as a man, as a husband, as a father, and kind of getting your values and the destination that you're describing. Like, where do I want to go and take my life, and what does God want for me? And getting to come home. Oh my goodness! And then the friends you make along the way. What was so fun about this, Reed, this church plant thing? 60 people moved with us from the network from Michigan State to Denton. So I got to
wow.
leave home and make all these friendships in ministry and in leadership, and invite them back to see where I'm from. And you know this too. Like, what's the old like Chinese proverb? It's like a river. You never step in the same river
Sure.
twice, because the river's never the same, and neither is the man. And oh my gosh, this context, Denton, Texas, has changed so much. But so have I. And there's difficulties entering into old relationships here, where their perspective is the old you, and there's some gaps there. But it's been a joy, man, getting to bring people back.
Yeah, and that's interesting too because over that 8-year period of time, there was pre-COVID and post-COVID, and
Oh
Texas and
yes,
Dallas was a place where they all went to relocate to, and so that totally
that's
changed.
right.
And that's again back to that river thing. But I think it's a testament to your leadership, right? That you can create a environment of humility that others want to follow. That 60 people uproot their life and relocate down to where you're at as well in that process. And so, I think it's a good challenge for other leaders. If you began and you left where you were at, who would follow you? I think that the
Yeah,
question I'd ask myself, and then conversely is, if someone were to ask you to go somewhere, who would you listen to and follow them? And those are
yeah,
good things. And then I would ask myself in that question, what would make me worth following? And what would make that person I chose to follow worth following? And if you look at those characteristics and make sure those are the things we should lean into and build, because to your point, all the things you left, we generally look at the bad things. It's easier to identify, right? But we don't look at the
yeah.
things worth following. We look at the things worth not
That's
following, right?
great.
And so I think that's a key part of that. If we're going to go lead an organization, we need people willing to follow us, right? And relocating is a much bigger commitment than coming into work that I'm paying you for 40 hours a
Yeah,
week
yeah,
here,
yeah.
here at Signal, and relocating your whole life somewhere else is critical there. So, is there something that you think stood out that made those 60 people, I mean, that's a lot of people, worth to relocate with you? What do you think it
Well,
was that made you worth following?
I certainly love those questions. I'd add one more, which is the vision or the calling something that's worth giving your life to? I think that would be the thing in our network that
Right.
drives people more than my leadership. But I can answer the question. I just think, man, is the thing that you're trying to build an organization? Is it making an impact on the world? Is it worth people giving up their life and moving across the city or across the country for? There's that. I do think that's a big reason why 35 people from Michigan State and about
Mm,
25 from across our country
mm,
in our network that you've talked to some of my friends on moved to Denton, Texas, because there's a vision and a calling. Certainly, God has given me experience in leadership, communication, preaching, leading, and a great team of people. Everybody who came on our staff team of those 60 had been on staff with me prior and served with me. And so it's just been such a joy, to get those guys to come. So there certainly is leadership. I would say if you ask those guys, my staff team who knew me, who moved here, I hope they would say, Zach, there's a authenticity and a humility to Zach. There's a joy and a contagious joy in his leadership, and he actually knows the people he's with. As much as things have grown, especially the leadership of our organization, I want to know them and connect relationally. I think that's what they would say, and then they go, and the vision that God has given our network and our church is pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I had an opportunity to hear you speak in front of about 8,000 people, before we
Oh
met. So
yeah,
I was there at the SALT conference when you were speaking, and I think I would say that, even if they haven't. I can tell, just I've heard a lot of speakers, and clearly everyone here, that I think there is a natural humility and authenticity that's associated with it. Hence why, you're on this broadcast or podcast. But I would also say, with regard to the SALT company, to your point, first it has to be vision. Second, it has to be leader. In order to
Yeah,
lead an organization, it cannot be leader first because the organization will fail post leader.
that's right.
It has to be the vision that's a transcendent, eternal, and universal vision. And then they have to believe that leader will get them closer to it. And so
Yes.
the first step is the vision, the second step is the leader. And so if you are a leader listening and you want to build an organization and you don't have a clear, universal, transcendent, and eternal vision, then you're not going to have a sustainable organization, number one. And then number two is if they don't believe you can execute on it, they're not going to follow you. And so it requires two steps, right? And the Salt Company has been around, the Salt Network's been around for quite some time now, and it's seen that vision and manifested in many ways. And then the second part of that is they trust that you're going to be able to execute on that based upon your leadership journey so far. And I think if we're taking a lot of that away as listeners or people that are participating in this, that's exactly what we need to be if we want to build organizations. Have a clear, transcendent, universal, and eternal vision, and then be the leader that can accomplish that going forward. And so any as we kind of wrap this together, where do you see your journey of leadership going from self, others to organization going, Zach, from here?
Yeah, there's a jump from being like a college pastor, minister to being a lead pastor. And I'm now entering some pretty unique leadership situations. It's one thing to counsel the young college guy
Mhm.
who's sleeping with his girlfriend, who got drunk last night and needs to hear the gospel so early in his life. Brother, it's another thing to counsel a marriage that's on the rocks that has 3 kids and heading towards the. It's just like I'm now put in situations that make me more uncomfortable again, that are challenging me again. And it got comfortable a little bit in the college mission world. You do something for 8 years, you know all the answers. Oh, brother, it's so fun to be in this seat. I do not have any of the answers, it feels like, but I do sense I'm growing again, which is great and wonderful. And so I hope King's Church Denton grows alongside me again, and the people alongside can see that.
Awesome. Well, as a closing comment, is there any sentence or point that you would impart upon this group that's listening that says, hey, if you are whatever stage of your journey right now, here's something I would lean into and communicate on your behalf that to this audience that they can take and run with from here.
Oh, dream big. If you would have told Zach back in middle school, high school, 20 years ago, hey, this is the story that God is writing for you, I'd have just been blown away, man, and never would have dreamed it. Um, and that shows a little bit about my lack of faith. I would just say, to your point, like, find a vision that's worth living for and dream big with it. I just love the Salt Network. We have dreamed as big as we can right now. And we think God's going to help us accomplish it. And so, if there's any leader listening, I would say don't discount what God can do, especially if you're listening to a podcast like this. You're already thinking a lot further along than I was. And I would just lean into that, dream big, and find something worth giving your life for.
I love it. Dream big. You're out there, dream big, right? I think I can say the
Yeah,
same about myself. Many times we try to look at that default and the complacency, but if we just turn around, dream big, and then don't stop, right? Don't stop until
that's
we
right.
get there and lean into those and learn along the way. That's what the Next in Leadership is for. So, Zach, thank you so much for participating this week. I hope that many of you who are listening could take some information from this. Dream big, and we will see you the next time on the Next in Leadership, the interview. Thank you.